Sotano de Xoconostle Cave Tragedy. On July 10, 2005, five friends packed supplies into a truck under a blazing sun in San Luis Potosi. Their destination was Cueva de los Caballos, and their reason was an underground rave. None of them had ever gone caving before. They brought no helmets, no headlamps, no maps, and no idea what terrain they were entering. What they did bring was alcohol, loudspeakers, and enough drugs to blur their judgment completely. Miguel, self-declared leader, had seen a photo of a party in a cave and decided they should recreate it. The campsite was already crowded when they arrived, littered with other attendees and parked cars. They set up tents poorly, drank heavily, and ignored the weather forecast predicting heavy rain. Slippery trails led them to the cave mouth, where music echoed from deep within. Daniel twisted his ankle on the walk-in, but drank through the pain without complaint. Inside the cave, lights pulsed from portable rigs, and hundreds danced in a haze of heat and echo. The five friends drank and partied for hours, steadily losing track of time and sense. They wandered deeper into the cave, beyond the posted signs that weekly marked "Do Not Enter." The rain outside thickened, but inside, no one seemed to notice or care. At midnight, Miguel insisted on returning to camp for more beer. Alejandro followed him, half sober and concerned, but not enough to stop him. They had no lights, only the occasional lightning strike lit their way. Their phones were dead from photos and videos taken earlier. The trail back was flooded, indistinct, and deceptive in the darkness. Miguel moved faster than Alejandro, emboldened by alcohol and delusion. A flash of lightning illuminated what Miguel thought was solid ground. He stepped forward, directly into empty space. The sound of glass shattering was followed by a cut-off scream, and then silence. He had fallen into Sotano de Xoconostle, a vertical pit they hadn't known existed. He dropped 79 feet, tumbled down a slope, then dropped again 62 more. Alejandro froze as the sound vanished into echo and rain. He called out again and again, but no answer came back. Sobered instantly, he stumbled backward in panic, barely avoiding the same fate. By pure chance, he managed to navigate back to the cave entrance. He told the others what had happened, and the party fell apart instantly. Carlos, Alio, and Daniel rushed into the storm to look for Miguel, still drunk but terrified. A nearby attendee, one of the few sober enough to think clearly, contacted emergency services. Rain still fell as dawn approached, now slowed to a cold drizzle. Rescue crews arrived with equipment, maps, and the experience the group had lacked. The four friends, now silent and sober, led them to the last place Miguel had been seen. Rescuers identified the pit almost immediately, a known vertical drop avoided by all trained cavers. They rigged ropes, harnesses, and lighting systems, descending cautiously into the shaft. At the bottom, they found broken glass, wet stone, and Miguel's body. His head had struck stone multiple times. The trauma was immediate and fatal. He had not survived the first impact. His body was extracted hours later, carried up the shaft with slow, grim precision. The site was closed, and investigators quickly confirmed what everyone already knew. The cave was not responsible for Miguel's death. Ignorance and alcohol were. The four surviving friends were left to process the horror of what their choices had caused. Their tents and speakers still stood at the campsite, useless reminders of their weekend of fun. Within days, new warning signs were posted. The underground raves were banned, at least officially. The Bunker Cave Rave Party Tragedy. It was a Saturday night in August 2020, and Oslo, Norway was winding down early under COVID restrictions. Bars closed at midnight, streets emptied, and young people stared at phones, bored and restless. But beneath their feet, deeper than a 20-story building, a different world was waking up. Buried 229 feet down sat a massive abandoned bunker, cold, sealed, and silent for decades. It had once been a fortress. Now it was the stage for something far more dangerous. 3 weeks earlier, a message had spread in whispers across private online groups. Rave Cave, Saturday, tell no one. The location was secret, the plan illegal, and the excitement unstoppable. The bunker's single entrance, a 1 square meter crawl space, had been pried open. The organizers ignored COVID gathering limits, ignored safety codes, and prepared to host hundreds. They hauled down beer, lights, speakers, and diesel generators through the crawl space. To muffle the sound of the generators, they sealed the ventilation shaft with plastic and duct tape. They had just created a sealed gas chamber and didn't know it. As night fell, small groups began arriving, slipping into the crawl space by flashlight. One by one, people vanished into the earth, descending into a bunker with no proper exits. The concrete cavern lit up with music, laser lights, and bodies dancing in waves. The bunker pulsed with color and heat as more people arrived. By midnight, nearly 200 people were packed underground with no airflow and only one escape route. The diesel generators hummed louder, pumping power and carbon monoxide into sealed darkness. The rave hit full speed as fog machines and bass lines drowned out everything else. But the air had started to change. Collapse begins. Oxygen levels dropped slowly, unnoticed beneath the pulse of the party. Carbon monoxide, colorless and scentless, built up invisibly with every passing minute. People began to feel dizzy, lightheaded, but blamed it on heat or dancing. Some stepped out through the crawl space for air, then returned, never guessing why they felt better outside. One man made repeated trips, unknowingly saving his own life. Others stayed inside, confused and growing more impaired by the hour. No alarms, no smell, no warning, just silence behind the pounding music. At 3 a.m., the power cut out without warning. Lights gone, music dead. In total darkness, panic bloomed. Voices shouting, feet scrambling on concrete. Someone opened the sealed generator room, and death spilled out instantly. Carbon monoxide burst into the crowd, concentrated and lethal. 3 people collapsed immediately, their brains shutting down in seconds. Others rushed to help, inhaled the gas, and dropped seconds later, eyes glassy. Some partygoers dragged the fallen toward the crawl space, vomiting and choking. The narrow exit became a bottleneck, bodies pushing, panicking, trying to breathe. Outside, police noticed dazed youths wandering the streets, disoriented and pale. The truth tumbled out. A party underground, people unconscious, some not moving. Emergency calls went out at 3:46 a.m. as first responders raced to the scene. Fire crews arrived to find a sealed structure with gas levels high enough to kill in minutes. Rescuers had to suit up, vent the bunker, and move fast before more died inside. 7 unconscious victims were pulled from the darkness, barely alive. 25 total were hospitalized, 5 in critical condition from prolonged exposure. Even 2 officers who helped were poisoned, needing treatment. The gas had saturated everything: floors, air, lungs, invisible and deadly. Doctors called it a miracle no one died that night. Authorities later revealed that police had been tipped off about the event days earlier, but did nothing. Mystery Cave Tragedy. Under a gray January sky. In 1993, Don Bid drove toward a mysterious sinkhole near Mystery Cave in Perry County, Missouri. Days of torrential rain had soaked the limestone karst, making it prime terrain for sinkhole formation. Bid parked at midday, stepped out into 38 degrees Fahrenheit air, and loaded his gear, tools, lights, thermos, and water. He wore thermal underwear and an oversuit, standard winter caving precautions. A quarter-mile hike through muddy woods brought him to a 6 by 12-foot sinkhole with a collapsed bottom. The discovery hole he'd carved earlier had caved in under the recent rainfall. Determined, he began trenching clay and rock with steady, deliberate effort. Tools swung rhythmically. Mud piled on the slopes, sweat dampening his base layer despite the chill. For 3 hours, he excavated, pausing only to sip hot coffee from his thermos. At approximately 3 p.m., he crouched into what he hoped was the reopened cavity. Without warning, the clay slopes collapsed in a mud avalanche that engulfed him to the waist. The heavy, suction-strong clay gripped his legs, immobilizing him instantly. He tried to dig himself free, clearing mud to his knees 5 times, each attempt futile. Every movement released more soil, burying him deeper and tighter. Daylight began to fade as overcast skies crushed any sun, pushing the clock toward evening. Between 5 and 6 p.m., rain resumed, steadily filling the sinkhole at 1 inch every 15 minutes. Bid realized the water would drown him in 6 to 7 hours if rescue didn't come. As darkness fell and water reached his chest by 7 p.m., hypothermia set in. Cold soaked through his suit and underwear, pulling warmth from his core. Numbness crept into his fingers while rational thought began to fray. At home, Bid's wife Dawn grew alarmed when he'd not returned by 8 p.m. Her calls went unanswered due to spotty cell reception in the cave region. By 9:15 p.m., she contacted experienced cavers Steve Taylor and Gene Kraka for help. Taylor and Kraka gathered gear and raced to the forest under spitting rain and darkness. Bid, his torso submerged, began wheezing laboriously as water rose and temperature dropped. He tied webbing around his waist and an oak tree at waist height to prevent slipping under. Weak but conscious, he murmured memories, preparing mentally for death. Rescuers found his truck at 10:30 p.m. and moved into the forest under flashlight beams. Rain intensified as they navigated 40 acres of sinkhole-pocked woodland. At 10:45 p.m., they heard a faint human call above the rain. By 11 p.m., flashlights revealed Bid, neck-deep in muddy water surrounded by clay. His swollen hands clutched at raw clay after 8 desolate hours trapped. His breathing was rapid, core temperature perilously low at about 92 degrees Fahrenheit. 2 rescuers ran for equipment. One stayed to offer coffee and warmth via a carbide lamp. Rain slicked the 12-foot deep walls as rescuers assessed the vertical slump. They rigged a cable ladder and Z-drag haul system anchored to a sturdy oak. Using webbing under his arms, they began pulling to counteract the clay's suction. Despite 3-1 mechanical advantage, Bid refused to budge. Clay and debris over 600 pounds held firm. Around midnight, the fire department arrived with more gear but could not use a powered pump. Instead, rescuers formed a bucket brigade, hand over hand, removing water against rising exhaustion. Chemical heat pads went to Bid's neck and torso to combat hypothermia. By 2 a.m., 2 hours of brutal bailing lowered the water to his chest. In near freezing water, rescuers removed rock and clay from around his legs. At 3:30 a.m., 8 rescuers pulled on ropes and felt the first movement. A final coordinated heave freed Bid from the clay's grip, nearly 13 hours after entrapment. Wrapped in thermal layers, he was carried 800 yards of mud and brush to an ATV ambulance. Core temperature was taken in the ER, severe hypothermia but only minor frostbite and bruising. He made a full recovery and later credited his survival to letting others know his location and refusing to quit.